What's the worst HR is not your friend story you've experienced. Story 1 hour hired consultants to run morale-building employee input sessions, basically saying we're not from the company, you can tell us all the things you don't like about working here and would like to see changed and we'll put it all into a report for management. Don't worry, everything is anonymous, we just need material for our report and you guys get to have your say in improving things around here. Turns out HR and the consultants recorded all the sessions and played the highlights for management. People were disciplined for criticizing the company or their immediate superiors, and any shred of faith or trust in management that the employees may have had was instantly incinerated. Managers now complain that they don't know what's going on in their teams because nobody tells them anything. I wonder why. Story 2 HR ordered me to downgrade my 3 excellent employee reviews to satisfactory because management didn't recognize their names. I got written up for telling my employees this. HR denied that they told me anything, even though I had the emails from them documenting it. Totally worth it. My employees were excellent and got the raises they deserved. Story 3 Overall, I've been able to get along with HR departments with one exception. I was working a help desk job for a company during college and the head of HR called in for help. He was making an Excel spreadsheet and couldn't figure out how to make a formula do what he wanted. I offered to come take a look as we were in the same building and he told me I couldn't because the spreadsheet was full of confidential information. So I asked then if he could describe what exactly he was trying to do without giving away any specific info, and he told me that what he was trying to do was confidential. So I clarified that he wanted me to tell him how to do something but I couldn't see it and he wouldn't even tell me what it was he was trying to do. At that point he agreed that I wouldn't be able to assist him since he couldn't divulge anything. As soon as we hung up he called my boss to complain that I was useless. Story 4 I worked at a smallish company that grew big enough to hire a HR person. Her office was down from mine so in the mornings I'd swing by and say hi. That turned into grabbing a cup of coffee she had just made, the into having a pastry and talking about life. I found that if I mentioned someone's name in passing, a few minutes later she would spill the beans about that person's life. What work issues they had, health issues, family issues, etc. I learned really quick any issues I had not to take them to her. She made it like 6 months before she got fired. Story 5 I went to HR to report that my team's manager was illegally shorting all of our paychecks. HR's response was to adopt a new, company-wide policy addressing the paycheck issue and backpaying most people for a certain amount, and also to frame me for work avoidance. HR and IT disabled part of my login account to a tool we used, and then fired me a few months later after failing to fix the problem and allowing me to actually do my job. They tried to deny my unemployment claim afterward. Told the unemployment rep that they had logs showing that I did something to break the tool I don't even have access to break in the first place. They also didn't think to disable my email access in a timely manner, so I was able to back up all my emails with IT documenting exactly what went down. Unemployment approved my claim and hit them with a major penalty to their insurance. Story 6 Upon giving 2 weeks notice, I get this stupid rant about millennial snowflakes, how we can't take the stress of a real job, and how we think we're so important and unique, but in reality the only thing that would happen is that they would find another engineer to fill in for me, and things would be like I never existed. After the initial shock, I replied with a "You are absolutely correct. Me staying or not is meaningless. Consider my resignation immediate from this moment. Please give me the paperwork to sign." Story 7 At my last real job before striking out on my own, I had an exit interview with the HR lady, who was actually just someone who was friends with the company president who was filling in because the actual HR lady with a degree in HR and everything quit. A lot of people at this place quit. It was a terrible place to work with out-of-touch management and delusions of grandeur limping along building websites for a business niche that was mostly old people who thought the internet was magic. During the exit interview she asked why I was leaving. I told her I liked my coworkers a lot, but hated the company. She got this exasperated look and got genuinely upset, and told me that she'd been getting that same line from everybody else who quit and had their exit interview recently. It boggled my mind that they could hear the same thing over and over again from so many people putting in their time until they could go on to something better and not stop to think they should change something. Story 8 I asked my boss for a desk phone with a speakerphone function because sometimes I needed at work to conference people on the phone with people in my office. We had these old yellow phones, so he told me to make a request to him and CC our office manager, and he'd send it to the HR department of our region via email. So I put forth a nice email outlining what I am requesting, and why I need it for HR's request. My office manager replies all and asks HR per Lazarus 870 request, should I order the phone through the same channels I have used before or is there a new policy? HR responded livid. She demanded to know why I needed this phone, it was in the email. And then accused my office manager of going behind HR spec and ordering phones before without approval. My office manager told my boss, who called HR and chewed her out and I could hear yelling. My boss came out of his office and yelled at me, "See what you've caused." He was fired up but I know he didn't mean anything malicious by it, I just laughed. HR had to apologize to office manager for accusations. Turns out, after everybody yelled their lungs out for an hour, the speakerphone I needed was literally free and we had boxes of them in storage. I had it for a month before HR rolled out new fancy phones that were actually expensive and convoluted, requiring training to set up and use. At the company picnic we had to wear name tags and I had never met HR lady face to face and she came up and said, "Oh, we haven't met, what's your name?" and I was trying to hide my name tag, but she read it and didn't seem happy to see me. Story 9 pulled into a meeting with 2 HR reps in the middle of my shift, taken to this really nice boardroom, which was confusing because I was just a grunt and this is literally floors above where I should ever be. They sat me down and said basically what do you have to say for yourself. Me, still confused, tells them I have no idea what they're talking about, everyone is really quiet and serious and I'm scared shitless, and they say you know what you did, this is cause for termination, blah blah. I'm literally thinking this is really excessive for being a few minutes late sometimes. I insist I don't know what's going on. One of them maybe realized something was wrong and flips open a file and says you're XX right. Turns out they got me mixed up with someone else who has the same name. On the elevator ride down by myself I was still sweating. Don't know what that other person did but man, HR does not play. Story 10 I worked in the bakery at a Fred Meyer's for about 6 months when I was freshly 19. There was this like 45-year-old guy in meat seafood who was super creepy and all of the women in my department, and even one woman who was previously in my department but was moved to another TO get away from him warned me about this man from day one. Somehow, anytime I was on my break, he would be on his break too and he'd follow me into the break room and try to flirt with me the entire time. Not only did he follow me on my breaks and lunches, but if I had to walk to another part of the store to get anything he would run to catch up to me and walk with me. He followed me to my car a few times after I got off shift, and the scariest time was when I was closing by myself and he came into the back of the bakery and kept following me around the long table, trying to grab me while telling me how much he liked me and how badly he wanted to be with me. I told him no and to leave me alone constantly while managers just shrugged and said that's just how he is. My boyfriend threatened him when he got off work one time, even my father came in and threatened him because no one was doing anything. The final straw for me was one night when I was closing alone again he came into the back area and followed me into the freezer and tried to kiss me and he grabbed my. I pushed him and ran to the closing manager who also functioned as HR. He said he'd watch the store footage and talk to me the next day. Next day comes and he pulls me into his office and says that he saw the video and saw this man stalking me inside and outside of work and that he talked to him about his behavior, to which the man responded that it was just a misunderstanding. I replied that this had been going on for months and I wasn't going to take it anymore, and he had the nerve to tell me that he just does this to all the new girls. As soon as another girl gets hired, hell leave me alone. I told him he was A and quit on the spot. Turns out the creep was the brother of the store's owner who had been to jail in the past for assault and rape but was now cleaning his life up. TLDR 45-year-old man stalked 19-year-old me for 6 months trying to be with me, told managers on many occasions they didn't listen. Guy finally assaults me, managers talk with him. He says it's a misunderstanding. Manager says he just does this to all the new girls and when a new girl gets hired hell chase her and not me. Turns out Guy is a registered offender for assault and rape but he's the little brother of the store's owner so he gets a pass. Story 11 not HR but heed my warning, don't type anything into your work computer that you wouldn't say directly to your company's HR person's face. I have seen people had cases built against them for poor work and ultimately fired for the they say over Skype. Story 12 office survey. I put in some honest opinions of a member of my team. They were fair and honest criticisms of a system which was not working as designed. I had little contact with the system, but the whole thing seemed reasonable to me. I was in effect demoted for this. A position was created above me and a colleague who was my equal was to be my manager. Position did not exist before. This happened the same week my husband died and the management felt like because of the timing. But still, on my return to work, I was basically called out for criticizing the same system in a whole company meeting, and it was explained how X system should and did work, and anyone who thought it didn't work was stupid. Cut to 2 years later. Person above me quits partly because they're scared to tell company that anything's gone wrong because of how I was treated, and they have to promote me to that position because it now exists according to the rules, and I'm the only one who can do it. Again, in a whole company meeting, they admit X system isn't working and we're having a consultation to find out why I laughed. I couldn't help it. I had to leave the room before it turned into hysteria. Edit typos. Story 13 the HR payroll manager at a small hospital I worked at had a bad habit of not paying out the sign-on bonus that was paid out incrementally in 3 payments through the course of a year and sign-on bonuses for picking up extra shifts. After repeated requests to be belatedly compensated, I took it to corporate, who addressed my issue immediately. A couple weeks later I was terminated on what amounted to a technicality where I forget my badge one shift and my relief was late to take over sitting with a patient, causing me to receive more points against me than if I had called out for that shift. When I was called in to receive my notification, the director of nursing was shocked but ultimately not much she could do. Story 14 not the type of answer you were looking for, but when the stupid self-absorbed HR person replied to spam email allegedly from the boss, and sent all the info for all 400 employees, everything on your job application, sent to scammers. Thanks, Kathy, you stupid. After 4 years on the job, I was given a first and final warning for asking why the HR was behind a locked door and now dominated over half the first floor, filled with new furniture that was unused after 6 months. Meanwhile, my chair was taken by another employee and I was told to use the chair without padding. An executive from another department heard my complaint, stole one of the unused chairs from the HR expansion, and gave it to me, explaining that if I did it, I'd be fired. She did it, daring them to fire her. Story 15 worked in HR for a time, and it soured my view of HR more than any stories I'd heard. One incident that stands out in my memory was a young casual worker who accused her boss of harassment. I dutifully brought it up the chain, but the higher-ups did not care if the boss had done anything or not. The cost of not giving her any more hours was zero, so that's what they did. That's just one case that I dealt with, but you'd see it on a daily basis. There were literally pop-up notifications on the phone calls and emails from people deemed too high up to refuse. You're a part-time employee who's done everything right, hasn't been paid in 2 months, and can't make rent. Oh, out of luck. Nothing we can do. Meanwhile, their boss who forgot to put in a timesheet, of course sir, expedited payment sir, will be in your account by close of business sir. HR is there, protect the business. You want protection, join a union. Story 16. I reported harassment to HR at a large international company when I was 21. They notified my harasser, an older VP, before I even made it back to my desk. I was fired a few days later, despite an excellent performance review the week before he propositioned me. Story 17. I worked in HR and here's my advice. Never, ever willingly give up any information on phishing questions. Make sure your answers are brief, succinct, and don't elaborate unless absolutely necessary. Don't give second-hand information unless it directly impacts you or your work environment. My goal was to protect the bottom line under the guise of employee relations. If you become a headache and disruptive, regardless if you are in the right, we will find a way to terminate your employment. I spent hours upon hours in training learning how to ask the right questions to get the company's desired results. I will admit this may not be true for all HR departments, but for larger companies we are not your friend, and our attitude and pseudo-compassion is used as a disarming tactic to obtain the information we're looking for. Despite what you may be told, we do have an agenda. Story 18. The company I work for does anonymous surveys every year. My first 2 years I was under this horrible manager and in a terrible department. While the surveys were anonymous, they were broken down per manager, which is fine, but my manager had 3 people under him and it was easy to determine who was who. At a department meeting, the associate director said if the person who isn't happy wants to say something, now is the time or we will just move on. 30 people were in that room and most of them looked at me. It was so embarrassing. My manager used to make me use an Excel sheet to track everything I did, and he would look over it during our weekly one-on-ones, and he would often say there is 20 minutes of your day not accounted for. I was probably shitting or talking to someone, but I needed to account for every minute. He also could barely speak English and wanted me to help him and correct him. That's not my job. Luckily he was taken out of a manager position and the department was split up, and now I'm in a new role making twice as much under a manager who is amazing and understanding. Recently I had COVID and went out. After 5 sick days your manager needs to put in for you to get short-term disability, so I signed on the 6th day so that wouldn't happen, and I told my boss I was logged on so that wouldn't happen, and he got mad at me and said don't even worry about that, I'm not reporting it. If he ever leaves I'm following him. When I complained to a coworker about a minor dental insurance issue and HR contacted me about it within an hour. Now I know I can trust neither of you. Edit sorry. Drunken Friday night redditing can't word good. I had an insurance issue that I discussed with one person in HR privately, and mentioned to no one else. My coworker then asked me about it an hour later. Meaning, my coworker's buddy in HR must have gossiped about my issue, which was totally inappropriate. At least it was a small thing, and I learned I cannot trust that particular person in HR. Story 19. At my job we used to hire a few special needs individuals who would do some cleaning and light duty things. One day one of them did something wrong. It was very minor, but I can't remember the specifics, and the manager said out loud, right next to this guy, "Why do we keep hiring these retards?" and referred to his job coach as his handler. One of the girls that saw it happen was rightfully pissed off and reported it to HR. The next day she was put on unpaid leave for creating a hostile work environment. Same manager is still here, she is not. Story 20. Our HR always abuses the company budget. They have the nicest ergonomic keyboards, a fancy coffee machine in their office, and are the first to receive gifts from vendors. One time they did the food tasting for the company year-end party that they were organizing. Catering company allowed 2 people for food tasting, and will charge $100 for additional people. The entire HR department went in the afternoon and charged the company for the tasting fee, of course. Story 21. My ex's mom was in HR. She was pretty crappy about it and loved nothing more than coming home and telling us all the drama and gossip. My lord girl, and that's how I found out my married physician at the time was stupping the married doctor in the next office over. That woman could not keep her mouth shut. Hilarious for me at the time, but holy, looking back, I reported my boss to HR for treatment. HR said they'd talk to me again before going to him. He fired me 2 days later. HR at his side, he was friends with all of the higher-ups, so I wasn't exactly surprised. They escorted me out before I could collect what I needed from my computer for proof. Yeah, I was young and dumb, and I learned to have backups. Story 22. During an exit interview with my last job, HR asked me where I was going to next. HR: so what's the name of the company you are moving to next? Me: I'm not really comfortable disclosing that. HR: are you sure? It would really help us out. Me: I'd rather not say. HR: it's company policy that you need to tell us. Me: I said no, and if you continue further you'll be hearing from my lawyer. HR: shocked Pikachu face told my old boss this after I left and he was absolutely shocked. HR: have no right to know anything about the next place you're moving to. It's literally none of their business, but they tried to press it out of me anyway, more than likely to call them up and talk about me. Story 23. I used the term off as in get lost in an unofficial online forum. Someone alerted a corporate recruiter. who managed to dig through my previous posts, connect dots, narrow down who I was, and have the head of HR terminate my job offer without discussion, never knew was considered profanity. Story 24. One of our departments shut down at noon thanks to a HVAC issue. Building management needed to move cubicles and pull out a chunk of drop ceiling, so the manager took them all out to the bar for a team building exercise. Everyone in the department arrived the next morning to a final notice in lieu of termination on their desk that cited drinking on the job and time theft. The manager had an extra special third for improper use of a company credit card. None of what they'd done was against company policy, so the manager's boss, a vice president, called HR and told them to back whatever newbie had written them the off. HR instead forwarded over a brand new policy manual and told the VP to make sure all the write-ups were signed and returned by the end of day. VP goes up the chain to his boss, the CEO. The CEO hadn't even seen it, let alone authorized it. HR doesn't want to back down, even when the CEO calls them. Sure, he hadn't authorized it, but he had asked them to consider revamping it back in March. This was the glorious revamp. They'd gone back to square one and completely rewritten it. It's full of best practices, industry standard rules, and easy to understand language. Oh, and they've been enforcing it since May, so it would probably be best for him to just sign off on it, and any concerns he found could be incorporated in a future revision. Yeah, no, the CEO didn't make it past the first page before finding a contract law violation. Page 3 had a federal labor law violation. Page 4 would make the NLRB angry, and the section on PTO would get them sued 6 ways to Sunday. The head of HR was asked to resign. When she refused, she was fired. Story 25. I was kinda molested by the head of HR, and he got me by using all the wording from the anti-harassment training that he had arranged for the place. At the time, my employer was deciding whether to keep me or can me, and I was very stressed about it. He was the one to decide. I came to have a meeting him about it, and he made up a bunch of excuses to keep hugging me, the whole time joking by saying, haha, this is okay, right? I have your consent, right? Gotta ask consent, ha ha ha. I mean, who do you go to when it's the head of HR that does this? They had already fired me and he knew it but didn't tell me. We had another meeting with the head of my division a week or so later, where they just said, we aren't renewing you, and he tossed a big envelope across the table with all the unemployment stuff. Story 26. Mine was a job where I was working in HR, getting screwed over by HR. I was coming into a job that I was overqualified for, but took it for the same salary as my last job because A, I hated my previous job and wanted an out, B, I really liked what the company did, railroad industry, my dream come true, and C, because they said they couldn't offer me more and it was already more than what they could offer. I was the IT guy for HR, and one day about 7 months and they asked me to pull a list of everyone that left the HR department in the last year. The list only consisted of 3 people, one was my predecessor. When I pull info from their database, it automatically brings in a lot of their HR info that I'm supposed to remove prior to sending it elsewhere in the company, which includes salary. They had been paying my predecessor, who was less qualified than I was, 20 kier more than myself. I was also driving over 90 minutes to from work every day for this job because it was a dream of mine to work in the railroading industry. I had a new job within a few weeks, only a half hour away from home. Edit. Also, the new job I got at the end did come with a pay increase. Story 27. A coworker complained to HR about his manager being too hard on him and ended up getting fired. HR is not your friend. Do not trust them. Now payroll on the other hand, payroll is your friend. Payroll doesn't give 2 shits about your problem and you can tell them anything you want. Story 28. An anesthesiologist I worked with refused to keep his mask on at the end of a surgery, even though it's required to keep the room sterile in case we would need to reopen. Emergently, I asked him again to put his mask back on and he hit my arm. I got in his face about it and told him to never touch me or anyone else again. I wrote an incident report which went ignored, and followed up with HR. HR lady replied, well, what do you want me to do about it? After I relayed what happened, I replied, your job, and then silence from her. Never had a good experience from HR. The anesthesiologist finally got fired after 5 more nurses came forward saying he hit them, as well. Story 29. Here in the Netherlands, the government provided almost all of your salary for companies that lost a certain amount of revenue in the lockdown. One of the conditions to apply for the support model was that a company could not fire anyone. My employer decided it was more valuable to own a colleague of mine than to make sure the other 30 or so colleagues had food on their plates and a roof over their head. LPT GTFO of any company that calls you and your colleagues family. Edit. Since this has gotten some traction, and because I'm Dutch, mandatory GEKOLONISEERD. Story 30. When I got fired for having depression and being forthcoming about it after getting drowsy when starting a new medication, HR basically said, we sympathize with your position but we are not flexible enough for you. ID asked for 2 days off in a year to just spend time at home while I was adjusting to the new meds and having a really time. Got a letter on my desk from my boss after I came back that was titled with termination of employment and asking me to come to a meeting 2 days later with HR. I basically went in, said if you are honestly firing me for having depression that's fine but just admit it and don't say it was for my performance, which I know for a fact has been fantastic, and they doubled down and said that they were not able to accommodate someone with my unique circumstances. Those cunts. Went to HR on Tuesday because even though I enrolled in benefits, and my health insurance premium is coming out of my paycheck every week, I never got my ID cards. In fact, I called the insurance company and they never heard of me and couldn't help me. HR said they would get back to me. Yeah, right. Story 31. I was working at a 5-star hotel years ago. I was a banquet man, so I would set up and tear down events like weddings, parties, etc. I knew something was up when as a new guy they left me alone to tear down a huge bar mitzvah and set it up for the NBA. As you could imagine, the room was a mess. I stayed by myself until 5 a.m. to tear it down and set up it. Couldn't get it done. Once the morning serving staff came and they complained. I was like this and went home. The next shift I went to HR to complain. Turns out I was getting suspended for being hostile towards my coworkers. Days later I get a call being told that it would be to separate. If anything good has come from COVID-19, it is knowing how that company has probably lost a ton of money. I remember telling a woman I was dating this story, and she was just like, "That's up." Story 32. I gave 30-day notice at the giant home improvement retailer. No one notified me that all the money in my HSA would go away unless I spent it. Only 80. But I helped that jump start her POS dodge twice in the snow during the 30 days, not to mention resolving several computer and networking crises. No hourly employee had given more than a few days' notice. Story 33. Coworker accidentally backed his company truck into my personal car while it was parked. He alerted me and our local manager immediately. We took photos, filled out the incident report, yada yada yada. Everyone in our office was in agreement about what happened, that it was an honest accident and the company's insurance should cover the cost of fixing my car. Then the HR director got involved. First he tried to get me to assume liability since it was my personal vehicle that caused the accident. My car was parked in the parking lot and I was inside at my desk when it happened. When I pointed this out he backed down and said he would file the claim. Next I got a call from a hostile insurance adjuster for my company's insurance demanding that I provide my insurance information or they would be pursuing legal action. It turns out the HR director had filed a claim saying that I had run into the parked work truck with my car and tried to flee the scene but was witnessed by a coworker who reported me. I informed the adjuster what had actually happened and emailed her the photos and signed incident reports and witness statements that we had filled out, and she changed her tune pretty quickly and said she would get back to me. The next day I get a settlement agreement from HR asking me to accept $1,100 for repairs and to sign a form releasing the company from any further responsibility. I had only just dropped my car off at the body shop and hadn't even gotten the estimate back yet. I declined and was told that I either had to accept their offer or be out of luck. At this point I reached out to my own insurance and told them what had happened. As I went through the sequence of events I could hear my agent getting almost giddy about all the blatantly illegal tactics HR had tried on me. In the end they processed my claim and pursued my own company's insurance through subrogation. He also mentioned that they would probably be seeking additional damages due to falsification of statements in the initial claim. Don't with USAA. In the end the damage ended up costing over $4,000 to fix, but I didn't have to pay a cent, not even my deductible. I don't know if the HR director experienced any consequences, but there was a comment in our finance VP's year-end report about needing to reduce extraneous costs due to reporting delays and inaccuracies in liability claims. Story 34. HR was the boss's sister and the boss was a narcissist. The sister HR had very little actual life experience because they both came from a big pharma family and never really had a sense of what working a real job was like. Boss could do no wrong in his sister's eyes, so complaining about anything just got you gaslit.
Glad I'm not there anymore.
Story 35. I've been an exec at several large companies and am super disappointed to see that it's usually nothing more than the covering department. It could be one of the best roles ever. Let's create the greatest culture and attract the best people, making this such a fun, rewarding, challenging place to be with loads of development opportunities, support, coaching and all the trimmings. Let's recognize that a company is really its people, so let's create fertile soil for them to grow and feel fulfilled and therefore be the greatest evangelists for the company, because it's legitimately awesome. No, we're here for the sole purpose of making sure you don't sue the company, and that when we want you to leave, we've got enough data and leverage to make sure you go without a fuss. Bunch of bastards, they could have made it beautiful, but no, they make it out of gravel and corn. Thanks for listening, and thanks for the silver, kind stranger. Story 36. We found a spy camera in our department office. It was shaped like a charging brick and had been recording video and audio all night. We copied the videos off the camera after the offender took it down and left it out on their desk. We took the video file that showed the person sneaking around an employee to remove the camera and turned that in with the information of what happened. That was almost a year ago now and nothing has been done, getting ready to turn it in ourselves to the FBI. The delicious part is now the company isn't just guilty of 2 felonies, but also a misdemeanor because it is a crime not to report that crime. Marshmallow futures people. Story 37. In the 6 years I worked at a company, I forgot to hit the submit button on my timesheet once. QHR telling me that I wouldn't get paid for my worked hours and calling me in for a disciplinary interview, which was 1 hour of 4 people telling me how dare I forget to click submit. I forgot to hit submit because I was so overworked and I couldn't believe all 4 of them had time to waste an hour on such a useless meeting. Edit. This Reddit post details more ridiculous experiences I had at this job. Story 38. She also does payroll, lied about getting my late check to me, said she'd done everything she could. I called her recourse and he got it done ASAP. Yep, there was paperwork for me to do, she didn't know or care. Story 39. Not as bad as many of you PPL, but still piss me off. I'm over IT and I put in long hours, weekend work etc. regularly. I've been here for over 10 years and basically rebuilt their operation properly from the ground up. I had a server incident and put in 12 hours on a Sunday night Monday morning, which everyone knew about. Monday was a staff meeting that ran 3 hours in a hot room, and I went to sleep during a particularly boring rant by the legal department head about how overworked they are. I got called into HR over this first time in 30 years of employment. They lectured me about commitments to work and had the nerve to warn we fire people for sleeping on the job. Yes, we fire nurses who sleep on the night shift without monitoring their patients, not staffers who drift off in a status meeting, particularly after finishing a 90-hour week and operating on a couple of hours of sleep. Apparently the only reason they were up in arms is that the legal person complained about not having my attention in a critical staff update to her friend, the CEO. That was 2 years ago and I'm still not over it. Every time a recruiter calls me and I'm tempted to dodge them, that incident comes to mind. Story 40. My much older married boss kissed me after an all-day off-site. I told a woman in HR. She was furious. The next day, she said the male CEO wanted to handle the situation. I was removed from the project and my boss was not punished. HR is a joke.